Hello, everybody. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Emily.
And we are the hosts of the I Don't Think So podcast, where we decide if we think a conspiracy theory is believable or if we really don't think so.
Here at the I Don't Think So podcast, we are affiliated with Flurry Sports, and we present our theories on your favorite place to listen to podcasts every Wednesday. If you like what you hear, give us a like and share it. Also, follow us on our Twitter at I Don't Think So podcast _EH. I actually said that wrong. It's I Don't Think So _EH. No podcast. I Don't Think So _EH.
Now that you've heard it that many times, you can go and follow us.
Woo!
Yeah. So last week, Emily prepared a great theory for us about how we both believe that Mattress Firm has got something shady going on. They're up to something.
Just like the one sports person, Von Miller, that Flurry Sports podcast always says is up to something. He's not as up to something as Mattress Firm.
That's correct. The only reason I think I know who Von Miller is because he was on Dancing with the Stars. And he was good.
Yeah. He's great.
Had glasses?
Unsure.
I think so. Because I was like, ooh, I like his glasses.
Fashion.
Anyway, it is now my turn to present another theory. And as I was like halfway through preparing this, I realized that I feel like I've kind of hit a theme.
Okay. Sure.
But we're rolling with it.
Proud Mary, keep on rolling.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So today, I am going to be seeing if we think, Emily and I, if mermaids are real.
Oh, I like it. I like the theme.
I was like, I was doing vampire. I did vampires last time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like going on this whole like mythical creature, like
cryptid. Deep dive. And the vampires I just did because I find them interesting. Yes, absolutely.
But
Twilight.
Mermaids, I'm like kind of like I feel like I could be swayed.
Oh, there's swayability. I feel like, vampires, if you swayed me, it would have been probably the most amazing argument you've ever brought forward. But mermaids, there's some sway there.
Yeah, so I just wanted to start with, like, Emily, what do you know about mermaids?
Well, there's a movie about them. Her name's Ariel, red hair, amazing.
Many, I think.
Probably. This one's about a little one. But they are, from what I understand, they're like supposed to be half human, half fish. They're often depicted as these very beautiful women who lure sailors, or sailors see every once in a while. But I think some people say that they actually saw manatees, which I think manatees are very cute. But I would never be like, wow, what a pretty lady. She's big and she's gray and she moves through the sea. Anything called a sea cow, I don't understand how you mistake as a beautiful, beautiful woman. No hate, though. No hate. I love manatees. I think they're adorable. But beyond that, I believe they breathe water, kind of like fish. Not that fish breathe water, but they do the gill thing.
Gills, yep.
But other than that, I don't know too much else. I think I've seen some like scary depictions of mermaids, and I think of like Peter Pan, where they kind of yank you into the water and drown you.
Mm-hmm.
Where they have kind of those webbed hands and fins and very pronounced gills. it's a very different interpretation of mermaids than Disney had.
For sure. Yeah, so what I guess was kind of interested about it is mermaids can have such a variety of like interpretations, like you said. Like when I first think of mermaids, I originally think of The Little Mermaid, obviously, where it's a Disney movie. She obviously tries to become a person, gets transformed. My second thought is Aquamarine. Same vibes. Have you not seen that movie?
No, I'm thinking of H2O, the show. I was like,
oh no!
Oh no, Cleo!
Also, same vibes.
Same vibe.
But yeah, Aquamarine, where she is a mermaid, but then can come on land. I can't remember how she comes on land. But then if she gets wet, she grows a tail again.
Very H2O vibes. Got it.
It's the same thing. Just movie version and not Australian.
Less Australian.
Yes.
Less accents.
And then I also think about, there's like, so those are kind of like more beautiful, nice versions of mermaids, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also depictions of them, like you mentioned in Peter Pan, where they're a little bit more scary. Or in Harry Potter, in the second one, they actually dive, and or not second one, the fourth one. Sorry, I don't think you've seen very many Harry Potters, but it's in the Goblet of Fire, where there's like a trial where they have to go under the water, and these mer people are protecting like the people that they've captured to try to bring them back up, and it's one of their trials in the Goblet of Fire. Anyway, they're a lot scarier, but they still hold a lot of the same characteristics of a mermaid. So that's kind of like a balance of a good one and a bad one. Not that the ones in Little Mermaid or not Little Mermaid, in Harry Potter are evil, but they're a lot more like scary looking, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if they were trying to kill people, I wouldn't necessarily call them good.
Well, in the movie, like one of the trials, like they take a friend and the wizards have to come up with some kind of spell or like herbology thing that they could take to allow them to breathe underwater for an hour to try to rescue their friends and bring them back up to the surface. And so they obviously put like some sort of curse or whatever on the people that are underwater so they don't die. But the mer people are like saying like, no, you can only save one person. And Harry's like, but they're all my friends. Oh, I'm a good guy. Saving 3 people.
Taking them all.
Yeah.
That's and cheating, Harry.
Yeah, but then he moves up from last place to like second place or something because of how many people he saves. Thanks, Dumbledore. Anyway, tangent.
Understood.
But leads me, though, into some of my characteristics. So a lot of times we do see them as they are half human, half fish. A mermaid would be like a female version of a mer person, and then there's a merman. That would be the male version of a mer person.
Yes.
But they both carry the same characteristics. Women or the female mermaids are typically seen with like long hair that they're seen brushing a lot to try to attract sailors. They're typically seen as being very beautiful and having very beautiful voices, being able to sing really well to like lure people in. However, people believe that the mermaids myth originally started in Greek mythology with sirens.
I was going to say, what's a siren? What's the difference?
So sirens, what is kind of tricky is sirens, when they're originally brought about in Greek mythology, were half human, half bird, but then they could also transform into being half human, half fish. So when they're on land, they're half human, half bird, could fly. When they're in the water, they're half human, half fish to be able to swim.
Were they still considered extremely beautiful as a half bird?
Yes, and they were still seen as trying to like attract people and things like that.
I can't imagine any scenario where someone's half bird and still like hot.
Fair.
I see like patchy feathers and a scraggly wing hanging out.
Maybe that's why they rolled with the mermaid part.
That's right. They're like, you know what? You know what looks better? Just a tail.
For sure. But what is interesting is that obviously some of these more documented experiences of seeing mer people started in Greek mythology. However, we see connections of mermaids or sightings of mermaids throughout all of history across the world, which is really interesting. So for example, in the Middle Ages, we saw more of the connections to the fish and calling these creatures mermaids instead of sirens. And what is kind of considered to be the Western concept of mermaids is that like beautiful, seductive singer that may have been influenced, and they're trying to get people to come about and potentially causing shipwrecks and things like that sort. Okay. So I'm going to give you some examples of different mythologies and stories and sightings that were seen across the world, such as in Europe, Asia, and Africa. Okay. Throughout all of these things, they're following those similar characteristics of typically being beautiful, but more specifically having beautiful voices that were trying to draw sailors to their deaths, and also being blamed for like different natural disasters such as floods, storms, shipwrecks, and then drownings as well. Okay. So one of the more famous documentations actually does come through literature. Now, this is obviously a fictional story in Homer's Odyssey. However, it is based on some thought of him having real-life experiences of hearing people talk about mermaids in real life. So in this story, have you read the Odyssey?
No. Not a big reader. Never seemed like a fun time to me.
I think in like classic literature sometimes I had to read it for like English lit or something, I think.
In college?
No, in high school.
Oh, well.
But I also dropped the class before school started. I think I had to like read it over the summer. And then they're like, you have to read 7 books before the school year starts. And I was like, me. And I dropped it and tutored instead.
Thanks, but no thank you.
But anyway, Odysseus is like the captain in this book. Okay? And there's this very like famous part of the story where he had his crew tie him to like the mast of the ship because all he wanted to do is like see and hear these like mermaids singing. But he knew that could lead them to get pretty much they would get distracted by these mermaids to the point where then they'd crash into the rocks or cause drownings. Men would like jump overboard to their deaths to try to chase these beautiful voices and beautiful creatures. And so what he did in the story was that he had them tie him to the mast so he couldn't escape and couldn't like steer the ship that way. And then had his crewmates fill their ears with wax so they would be unaffected by the sound, but he could still like look at her pretty much, and it worked. So that was like a way that they survived these mer people and things like that.
You think they're like singing their tune and they're like, gah, the old wax in the ear trick.
Yeah. So that's kind of more of like a fictional example of some of how they would like draw people in and things like that. However, I do have some stuff that dates back a lot earlier than this. So we see this a lot in art. This started in the 2nd century AD. There was a statue in Greece. So this is kind of following more Greek mythology. However, it was like a depiction of, it's this statue of Dear Sato, which is just a statue of a mermaid, following these characteristics with the long hair, the fins, and from what it looks like, it literally just looks like a person with the tail. So they believe that they would still breathe air and come to the surface when they needed to breathe instead of having gills. However, there's also a picture that was illustrated called Physiologus, and this was actually created in 9th century France, where this follows more of the like fish-like appearance, where they do look more like fish, they have gills and things like that.
Oh, okay.
Then
That was also in Greece?
That was in France. So the first one was in Greece. The picture was in France. And then there's also lots of pictures and art, like different art pieces, statues, stained glass, and paintings that were done throughout the 13th and 14th century in many Norwegian countries, specifically Sweden, of seeing these sightings as people were sailing of mermaids. Okay.
Interesting.
They continue to follow the similar folklore and descriptions in Korea, Japan, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, New Zealand, and throughout Africa. And one example we can see of this is in Zimbabwe, mermaids were known as Nuzu, and they are believed to be this is more of like a dark side of this, where they are very like benevolent and malicious, and they're very angry about sailors taking fish and things like that. And that's why they cause this misfortunes, bad weather, drownings, and disappearances of sailors. Ooh. And so while some people might believe it would be like more with like pirating and things like that, many people there believe it was due to mermaids actually attacking these different ships and sinking them.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure. So that's kind of more of the like folklore, kind of giving you a picture of how we see this throughout the entire world.
Nice.
To give you some more recent, not recent, but a little bit more recent actual documented sightings in North America. There are 2 documented sightings that were in Canada. One was near Vancouver and one was in Victoria. And this happened in 1870 and then later in 1890. Mm-hmm. And they would actually draw what they were seeing, and it followed the same thing of this beautiful woman, long hair with the tail. However, they were a lot smaller than what people imagined. Like, they weren't like the size of a human. They were actually like a smaller version of it.
Like
Little Mermaid. Like a child size. So it wouldn't be like full-grown adult. It would be more of like, I would say like an early elementary, like 8-year-old. Think of like 4 feet long. Okay.
Sure.
And then later, there was also, this one I kind of giggled at. It was a Pennsylvanian fisherman reported 5 sightings of a mermaid in the Susquehanna River near Marietta in June of 1881. So this kind of falls between the 2 sightings of them in Canada. And this river does connect out into the ocean, so some thought maybe they like swam inshore. I don't know. So, in more recent sightings, there was a sighting in August of 2009. Dozens of people actually reported seeing a mermaid leaping out of the water in Haifa Bay, which is in Israel, and also in the Israeli town of Kiryat Yam. And they actually put out a $1 million reward to try to get documented proof of this, but no one was ever actually able to find documentation of like being able to take a picture or recovering any sort of body or anything like that.
Weird.
And then one more was that in February 2012, there was work on a reservoir in Zimbabwe again. Mm-hmm. And they actually, like, workers stopped and refused to continue because they were saying that mermaids were like hounding them away from the site, saying that they were going to come back and like try to drown them for destroying some of these bays and reservoirs. So they're very upset that their like home was being destroyed. Mm-hmm. And it was to the point where like Samuel Nkomo, which is like the water resource minister, had to like step in, and it was never resolved.
Weird.
Mm-hmm. Weird. So that's kind of like some evidence of how mermaids could be real. I guess a lot of this is based on my like opinion, I guess. Like, to me, I read so much about how like the ocean, like I forget what let's just was reading about this. It's like so much % of the ocean is unexplored.
I think it's like 80. I think it's really high.
Like it's a
huge
very
amount.
high number. And I just guess, like, how can we say something like that when there's so many sightings? We have a cat in studio.
This is Griswold. He is much quieter than Moose, but he's also a pest. Anyways.
Sorry. Distracted. Yeah, like, so to me, for there to be so many, like, sightings and documentation of this all over the world for so long, I just find it very hard to believe that something like this couldn't exist.
Right. Yes. I have a phobia. I do. A phobia of the ocean. The idea of just deep water terrifies me. Partially, can't swim that well. So it just seems like a terrible time. I always it was a joke, but like one time I flew over the ocean and I was like, if this plane goes down, I better die on impact. Because there's no greater fear for me than just buoying out there for who knows how long. It sounds terrible to me. Anyways, there's so much of the ocean that we haven't explored. One thing I find fascinating, though, is that places like Zimbabwe or even the gentleman who saw it in the river, that people are seeing it in rivers. Because, sometimes you don't think, like, if there was like a full-grown woman fish
in a river
swimming up a river, like, how has nobody found
like
it? So I do think
photo of it, yeah.
Like, we're like, accidentally hooked into one when they were fishing or hit one with a boat propeller. So I think there's value in the idea that they maybe weren't as, like, big as you would think, because there's some big fish in rivers.
Right.
But I find it fascinating when multiple cultures across multiple different time frames, or even current, like when they're having time frames at the same time. Not the best way to phrase that.
Like sightings throughout the world at the same time. But across the world. Yeah.
Like, they're not communicating. It's not like it's word of mouth being passed down of like, Uncle Jim saw a mermaid in the river, and it's like, you go tell your friend and they go tell their grandma who lives in France, and then grandma tells everybody, and then everyone's like, oh,
there's a mermaid here in France too. Yeah.
When they're like, hey, like, especially in like the 1800s, there was no way they were communicating that well across places that they're like, saw this weird woman fish. Wanted you to know about it. So I think that's very substantial, just in general.
For sure.
That people are drawing similar conclusions.
Well, and I guess for me, what really makes me kind of questionable about a lot of mythology is the widespread connections that we see throughout the world. Like, I just can't imagine that people are having these same experiences or telling these same stories throughout the world at the same time if there was, like, no amount of truth or evidence to back it up. Now, do I think, like, mermaids are swimming all over the place in present day on beaches? No. However, I don't think it's, like, unquestionable to think that they never did.
Yeah.
Or that there aren't some that could still potentially exist and they're just not. Like, honestly, if their whole thing is that they don't like people destroying their habitat, they're probably not going to, like, hang out on the beach.
Exactly.
And one other point I did have to kind of, like, contradict my argument kind of goes back to what you said, was how you were saying some people say that they're manatees. So some historical accounts of mermaids actually follow some of Christopher Columbus's journals. Now, he's not my favorite man.
No.
However, they pretty much just tried to discredit him by saying that all of these mermaids that he saw within the Caribbean were just manatees. He didn't know what he was talking about. And they're just like, you're blind. The tail is just a mermaid. Or sorry, the tail is just a manatee. And you must not have good enough vision to see their face. And so it can't be a mermaid. It has to be a manatee. And
Absolutely.
I'm like, don't get me wrong. I don't love the guy, but for him to do this much stuff, see this much things, I don't think he's just blind.
No. I do think he's a bad person.
Oh, for
Terrible
sure.
human.
Not backing him up.
Should not have a holiday, but here we are. Anyways. Even if you discredit absolutely everything he said, there's still so much evidence or people citing things out there. Now, the one thing I think is kind of a little bit of a devil's advocate against why they could exist. I think people try to make sense of things as best as they can.
For sure.
So you see a fish jump that doesn't look like any fish you've seen before. And all it takes is someone standing next to you to say that had a person's torso. And then suddenly your brain kind of goes, did that have a person's torso? And it's super easy for your brain to kind of switch things up on you and it be like, yeah.
Remember it differently.
Yes. And that's why eyewitnesses suck. But, you know, I think true crime, eyewitnesses, not very reliable because you just make things up. Because your brain fills in holes.
For sure. Especially now I think of like people trying to look for them. I guess that's one thing where I have doubt where it's like if people are trying to look for them, which I think people are, how can there be no like bodies that have washed up on shore or the baby, the kitty? How could there have been like no corpses like washed up on shore or like photographs or like you said like someone running into one or like capturing one in a net while they're fishing or like nothing? I guess that does make me a little hesitant to say like, yes, I believe in mermaids. However, I feel like I am like questioning. Like I don't think I would never say like, there's no way a mermaid exists.
No. I don't know if I'd ever say like, I think mermaids live in rivers.
Yeah, it's a little
which is kind of a weird thing for me, I guess, if I'm drawing a distinction. I would say like oceans are a higher possibility for me that they would exist. And I would even go as far to be like, sure. No, but I also don't believe that they're like beautiful women. Because a lot of the ocean that we haven't explored is like deeper ocean where pressure down there is just immense. Have you ever seen some of the fishes that live down there? Like the blobfish?
They're looking weird.
You take it out of water and it just deflates into a wrinkly, sad pile of snot. Like, to me, it's like, if mermaids exist, I don't think they're coming up for air. Because wouldn't that mean, like, you'd be sighting them
a lot more often?
Almost all the time. And so they have gills of some form. And my next guess would be that they'd be deep, deep in the ocean somewhere. And with that amount of pressure, a human skeleton can't, or a humanoid skeleton can't withstand that. So I'm like, maybe it's just like a blobfish up top and then a shiny, shiny tail on the bottom. That's the
with a shell bra.
With a shell bra. Flowing red locks. Christopher Columbus is like, she's beautiful.
She just had boobs.
I love her. Oh.
Understand.
Existed. He's like, well, you're mine. Because so is everything else. Hate you. Anyways.
Well, that's all I have.
That was very good. Yeah, I think like officially, I think there's a possibility. I don't think I'd ever say like no on mermaids.
I agree. I think I could say, I don't know. I would say I don't think so for like the very like commercial.
Oh.
Put out their version of mermaids that are out there. I think maybe I don't think so, but I am very much a believer that there could potentially be something that is similar to what we envision a mermaid being in the ocean.
Yes. Oh yeah. I agree. I think it's I don't think so for Ariel and her 6 other sisters. However, do I think there's a possibility of a blobfish humanoid creature? Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. Was there anything else you want to share for the good of the group?
If you guys want to see a picture of both Hannah and I have cats, and if you ever want to see a photo, we will post a picture of them on Twitter side by side. So whenever we have friendly interruptions and I yell at my cat Griswold, you'll be able to put a face to the name.
Same with Mittens. Yeah, I was going to tell you, I was trying to look for a conspiracy about cats. And every article it was like, cats work for the FBI. They're stalking you. And I'm like, I love my cat. I don't know if she has the brain power for that.
Griswold's been attacking my headphone cord for the last 10 minutes. So maybe there's something out there he doesn't want us to know.
Conspiracy.
That's what happened to his tail. Lost it on a job.
Oh, well, thanks, guys. Hopefully you come back next week. You're entertained by my mythical creature interest.
Absolutely. Come back next time. And if you like this podcast, remember to go ahead and like and share it with your friends, family, and maybe a stranger or two. And follow us on Twitter to see our cats and our funny and quick-witted posts.
Yeah,
we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.
How do I close it?